Welcome to Restoration Station, the official podcast of the Manila-based San Sebastian Basilica Conservation and Development Foundation, Incorporated. We are the organization that manages the holistic restoration of the all-metal San Sebastian Basilica. My name is Claire Vitug, the host of today's episode and the Executive Director of the Foundation. We came up with this podcast for our new We Learn S1 campaign, which we recently launched on our official Facebook because of the realities of the global COVID-19 pandemic. Inspired by the greater call for togetherness in these times, we're expanding our digital content to meet the different needs of our audiences at home. This is our way of bringing the restoration to you. It's one of the virtual experiences we are now offering for people who prefer to listen in. However you choose to experience San Sebastian, we are here to learn together. This podcast is also our way of introducing ourselves and our expert consultants in a way that is informative, but hopefully also entertaining. As a disclaimer, we are starting this podcast while staying safely at home with limited equipment. Like you, we're also learning to improve the audio quality with each episode. That said, we hope you still enjoy this episode.
Good afternoon, Melvin, and thank you for agreeing to have this conversation this really hot Tuesday afternoon. So how are you doing?
Tuesday ba yun? Parang Wednesday, no? Tuesday pa lang pala. Yeah. Well, we just heard the news, no, regarding the extension. So, we just have to with the waters, and we're finishing up some things, other projects, and we're doing some work from home stuff in the office. So that's why we're quite busy during the quarantine lockdown.
Why don't we introduce ourselves to our listeners first? So, Melvin, kindly introduce yourself and basically what have you been doing the past couple of years and what do you exactly do in this industry that we're in?
Well, I'm architect Melvin Patawaran and I do conservation works. It's actually my passion, and my company specializes in hospitality projects, doing resorts and vacation houses. So right now, I specialize in hospitality projects wherein I do modern vernacular tropical designs. And that's the product of what my goal when I was in college. And conservation and heritage is actually a tool towards that goal now, what I'm self-actualizing. When I was in college, I had this inspiration to come up with a Filipino architecture of a goal. Because I attended this lecture of, I'm going to share you this picture of the book by Shalsita.
Ah, okay. By Butch.
Butch Shalsita. Okay, can you see the, okay. Let's see the, so it was just a coffee discussion. He said that, how come you architects, you keep on looking for other designs wherein you can really get designs from the ancestral house. These are Spanish architect buildings design. These are done by the Filipinos, by the Chinese, and with local tone and inspirations. Meaning it's a tropical design. You cannot find it anywhere. I got into conservation because of my interest in searching for that DNA of the ancestral houses in the Philippines first. And then I ventured into the churches, researching, documenting, municipalities, municipal, provincial, capitals, so up to the all sort of heritage houses, including vernacular houses. Yeah. So I have a firm called Tropics Design Studios, and in 2000, I think I've been working with the architect Augusto Villalon since 2003. We met around 1999, so we worked together starting 2003. And I think 3 years ago, we formed a company called CHIRA, Cultural Heritage Resource Associates, to have a more formal company for conservation projects or consultations. Yeah.
You mentioned Augusto Villalon, or whom we call Toti Villalon.
Yes.
Now, for those people who do not know him, Toti Villalon is the person whom we considered as the father of heritage conservation in the Philippines. Yeah, I didn't get the chance to really work with him in projects, but we interacted whilst we were both members of the International Council on Monuments and Sites in the Philippines. And yeah, even in those very limited interactions, I also got to learn a lot from him in terms of how we actually proceed with heritage conservation in the country. So I
Mhm.
guess that's how he also affected you and how you proceed now with your work.
Yes, yes, definitely. Actually, I'm just a shadow of Toti Villalon,
Oh
like
no!
a sideline.
Uh-huh.
It's like a bodyguard of Toti.
Mm-hmm.
So I got this idea of since I want to look for a Filipino architecture design that is modern. My first step
Mm-hmm.
is to study what has been done before, and I cannot study the outside world because I have to know the DNA of the what has been done before, and which in my further studies and readings, I learned that Renzo Piano, Norman Foster had that part of their lives. They studied heritage.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they are very solid now in their modern designs. They're very confident because they know what has been done before. And during my studies also, I learned that during the Renaissance period, the classics, they documented the Greek architecture, Roman times,
Mm-hmm.
the classical
Mm-hmm.
proportions and everything. They measured it literally. So that's the birth of Renaissance. They got inspired to develop it. So I know that I was right on track that studying these um, old structures in the Philippines, I will go where I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
So in um, in 1999, in 1993, I think we went to vegan houses to vegan to check the ancestral houses. No, I was very together with some architects. I was student back then. I was really inspired that I have to really do this. And then 99, we came back to document 16 houses in vegan. So mostly students, around maybe 30 students all over the Philippines. So I was one of the heads and one architect. I was not an architect then. So we studied the documentation of 16 ancestral houses in vegan. And then after that, we had a grant from the LG of Silay Negros to document
Uh-huh.
ancestral houses there. Almost all the houses were able to document 1999 and 2000. Then we had an exhibit of our works. Then we invited architect Augusto Villalon. So that's where we met. Then he saw the works, and then 2003, one day he called me. He said if I wanted to work with him regarding the Gabaldon schools in the Philippines because he's a consultant of DepEd. So I was very excited. That started our journey together working in conservation. So
Mm-hmm.
we're able to do a lot of documentation, vegan, Iloilo, Taal,
Mm-hmm.
Pandon, Intramuros, so all sorts, name it.
Because we kept on saying documentation. Could we explain further what documentation is in the context of heritage conservation? Well, again, this is for the benefit of our listeners.
First and foremost, it's the first step in conservation to document it. Just in case the next day
Mm-hmm.
it fell down or got burnt, you have a document of the structure, meaning you can
Mm-hmm.
reconstruct it, and if it doesn't fall
Mm-hmm.
the next day, you can use it as a reference for your conservation actions.
So not only do we find out the history of a heritage site or a structure, but we also have to document them visually. So this is where the expertise of the architects and engineers would come in. So in this case, we're talking about architectural drawings, engineering
Yes,
drawings, and even
engineering.
photographs. Is that correct? Uh-huh.
Yes. Photographs, yeah.
So you mentioned that
Um,
you had these projects in Vigan, in Silay, and then the Gabaldon houses. So what were the learnings there, Melvin?
um, what I learned is that because architecture is a business also, no,
Mm-hmm.
there was a time that all my projects are conservation,
Mm-hmm.
and we are so dependent to Toti, and he just keeps on giving us project. Even we had a project in Melaka in Malaysia. So, but my goal is to use it for my passion, really the modern Filipino designs. You know, up to the point I had to do masters in UST. It's called the Cultural Heritage Studies. And also I had a training in Lund University in Sweden. We had a 6 months training there and another month in Tunisia where we did our final presentation. I learned from the masters how they do it. Even though Sweden is not that really the highest level conservation, but the innovation that they do, no. So it's a combination of modernity and then the conservative approach in conservation and practical also, because I practice architecture and sometimes construction. No? Along the way, when we saw that we are so dependent, our office so dependent on conservation, we decided to look for other projects. No, that's when I started to look for non-conservation projects. First break is that a resort in Siargao, wherein we were able to make it, we called Harana Surf Resort. So after that, tuloy-tuloy na yung resort projects namin. And also a friend of mine tapped me to do a housing project, which is also connected to Filipino design. So now, with that housing projects, most of our clients want a Filipino touch in their designs. No, when I was chosen as the architect, the peg of the client is to capture modern Filipino architecture. Then his pegs were vegan houses, and they want also to blend the Siargao culture, the lifestyle, the vibe, no,
the surf
Siargao,
culture,
the locals, surfers, no. So the first thing we did when we visited Siargao, way back 2014, I think, I told them, can we check a village here? So we went to a fisherman's village called forget the place, but it's a surf site actually. We surf and then we check the fisherman's village. So I got inspired by their own character. I have, after some time doing heritage studies, I know how already to identify the distinctive factor, a distinctive identity of a heritage structure, of a house, So I got inspired by the houses. So that's why, if you can see here, this is a modern interpretation of that house. Once you enter the houses in Fisherman's Village, it's dark, but there are some streak of lights inside. And then you have the veranda in front wherein people lounge and chat. So that's how I interpreted it. And also, this one naman, yung restaurant, no? There was a previous design to this one, but I was not very happy to stoic, no? Knowing the dynamic vibe of the surfers and then the splashing of water when you surf, no? So the design of this restaurant just exploded. Wherein even there's an explosion of water, there will always retain a sharp portion of your surfboard in front of you. That's why when we decided to business plan, it's a business strategy to veer out from TOTI. So it's a combination of already of TOTI's project and the hospitality and housing projects along the way, vacation houses. So, and then one time, he said that to form a corporation already, because I think he got a sense that it's a time already to have established honest to goodness conservation firm in the Philippines. I'm not sure if there's any that specializes in this. Mostly puro consultant, individual, but a corporation, I don't think there's conservation company already in the Philippines. So that's his goal.
I don't think so as well.
So one time we had a project in Bohol. We did the Tagbilaran Heritage Tourism Plan. Tagbilaran and Puerto Princesa. We were tapped by USAID to do it, no? So one time we had a dinner with Toti, and then we just had chit chat, and then I asked him, Toti, what's your plan with Chira? Then he said, I'm going to pass it on you. Huh? I was really surprised, 2016. So, okay, what will I do? I cannot get projects in conservation. No, you can do it, he said. And then after that, after a year or two, his health deteriorated, and then he died 2018. So I think that's the signs that he knows already. So even that he can predict. So anyway, that's why one of the big projects, not under Chira but under Tropics personally, is the Manila Cathedral. No, it's like the epitome of all my experiences in conservation. Wherein I think they were selecting among 5 architects or something, no?
Yeah, just out of curiosity, how long did you restore Manila Cathedral? Because if I'm not mistaken, it was closed for a long time before your team came in. Is that correct?
Yes,
So
yes.
yeah, how long did you get to restore that building? Or how long did it take you before it was opened
I
again to the
think it was
public?
under works already for 6 months, I think most. And then we
Mhm.
handled it for around 1 to 1.5 years.
So I think it's that Manila Cathedral experience that somehow also prepared you for this current engagement with San Sebastian. Is that correct?
I think so. I think so because I will not have the
Uh-huh.
confidence if I don't have that experience.
I guess for the benefit again of the listeners, how did you end up working for the restoration of Bastet?
Well, it's just a one night, Miko Manalo called me up and then said, if I'm interested, and I said, well, I'm retired already. Told him. Uh, then we discuss, and it so sink into my mind that I need to. There's no one with that experience can help the San Sebastian. So since it's a spiritual thing project, it's a different thing compared
Mm-hmm.
to civic projects. No,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there's spiritual aspect of accepting the project. That's why after reflecting for some time, praying, asking advice from the priest, then I saw the signs that it's really. I know that if it's for you, it is for you. Everything will fall into
Mm-hmm.
its proper place.
In our past conversations, I remember you would always say, Melvin, that Baste or San Sebastian is perhaps your comeback project after a hiatus from conservation projects.
Yes, yes.
Now, I want to ask this question because earlier you were showing us and even explaining to us in great detail the projects that you have been in and also your reasons for actually being in heritage work. And it has a lot to do with your desire to become this really strong designer um, of of vernacular architecture or tropical architecture. Now, San Sebastian, as we all know, is a very different animal altogether. It's a
Yeah,
neo-Gothic
yeah,
structure, very
yeah.
European. So, how does that come in? How does that experience of working on vernacular architecture, tropical design buildings, come into play in your engagement here in San Sebastian?
Well, I think there is still this connotation of San Sebastian is foreign. It's metal. It's not Filipino.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's still that stigma, I think. So,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
not owing it. No? But if you look at the real significance of the San Sebastian, it's the Recollects desire for to spread continue the apostolate, spread of the good news. No? Looking at that angle, it will transcend the material thing, the metal thing of the San Sebastian. Actually, it will
Mm-hmm.
ano pa nga it will be a symbol of their longingness. I mean, their desire for that continuing service to the people, spiritual service to the people, to this San Sebastian.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just help spreading their spirituality through this preservation of this San Sebastian Church.
Well, it's really the reason why the Recollects chose something as sturdy as that material, in this case, metal, because they don't want their missionary work to be interrupted anymore. I mean, they've had like four other churches, for the past how many years, hundreds of years, but they all fell down because of several factors. Now, I think they reached that point when they said, okay, we don't want our missionary work to be interrupted anymore. So let's choose something that will last long.
Well, since it's a heritage building and it's tropicalized already in the Philippines, it adapted to
Mm-hmm.
the Philippines. And if you look at the history of
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the design and construction of the church, it's designed for the climate here. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
unconsciously, you will learn something from it. How a modern material from others' place can be adapted here. It's the same thing as
Mm-hmm.
here when you do resorts. A client will tell you, oh, can you use this kind of material? And then you just have to use it, adapt it in the setting of the Philippines, no? Culturally, weather, historically. So it's the same way with the San Sebastian Church, no? Even if it's made in Belgium, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
we will learn something from it that can be adapted.
So could we expect maybe in the next few months or even the next couple of years some tropical interventions in San Sebastian, given that you are practically at the very helm of the technical project or the technical restoration? Could we expect that?
If you notice, the first thing I approach is I try to look at is where there is the hot area in the church. No, we know that we have
Mm-hmm.
sensors on the ground floor. We're attacking it on the ground floor, but the heat itself is on the top, and that's why I look at the ceiling volume between the ceiling and the roof, because the hot air is trapped there, and then it emits
Mm-hmm.
downwards. No, so that's what I try to look at, ask the staff, the people, to check how it can be mechanically vented out the hot air in the ceiling, because the readings we got in the humidity and temperature studies, the hot area is in that ceiling portion and on top of the roof. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the approaches that I'm looking at. And then one time also in the afternoon, I try to touch the wall facing the sunset, the
Mm-hmm.
sun up there, no? And then the other
Mm-hmm.
wall facing the garden and the sunrise. So it has a different temperature, really. So it tells you that it's emitting hot temperature, no, from the sunset side.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, the coating that we're going to use to the waterproofing the roofing, it can have a insulation effect inside, so it will lessen the heat gain of the
Mm-hmm.
roof.
Mm-hmm. Now, Melvin here is not just a tropical designer, okay? And he's not also just a conservation architect, but, and this is something that we learned eventually, he's also an avid surfer, which I think explains why there's something in his tone whenever he talks about
Yeah,
Siargao. Now, and his projects in Siargao. Now, could you
yeah.
tell us something more about what you do outside of your work and yeah, and how you found your passion in surfing?
Okay. Again, it's related to my line of work and heritage. No, one time,
Uh-huh.
Nico has a project in vegan. No, documentation of an ancestral house, going to conserve it. And but before
Okay.
that, we did the Burgos Lighthouse documentation. He tapped me to do the documentation. The next is the vegan, no? And then before going to vegan, I decided to have a surf lesson in La Union, because it's along the way.
Okay.
And then we are scheduled, no? Way back 2006, I think. So coming back, he said he has something important things to do. It ended up me and my staff tried to learn surfing. It's not the season, it's around May, no? Or April. It's not a season, just small waves, no? And then if it's for you, it's for you. We just drop by a restaurant, by the beach, ask around if they're instructors, then someone introduced me to a local, and that's it. Had my first ride, and the rest was history. I never stopped.
Like how often
Yes.
do you surf? I mean, of course, not counting that period where we went under ECQ. So how often do you surf?
Since that time, every month, anywhere. La
Ah,
Union,
okay.
Baler, or Zambales. And
Uh,
sometimes in Daet. So every month, it's like my release, no? And it's 2 months
mhm.
already, no surf. So actually 3 months. So I'm already agitated.
So at the risk of, offending some municipalities or some resorts, what is your or where is your favorite surf spot in the Philippines?
Uh, for big waves in Siargao, no? But for playground, I think it's Baler. It's like a
Okay.
I have here the first photo of my surfing. Eh.
May I see it? May I see it?
Yeah. It's still 2000, medyo ano pa ako dyan, mga 10 kilos.
Oh, wow.
So mga 10 kilos, yan,
Yeah,
liit lang.
yeah.
So mga 10 kilos, ano pa ako dyan, heavier.
Oh,
Laki pa ng bodo.
okay. So this was in 2006, is that right?
2006, yeah.
Ah, yeah. Around that time that I also had a chance to be on the surfboard. I used to surf, but then again, I got myself into this accident. That's why I have this back injury.
Okay.
And up until now, I still somehow suffer from it. But yeah, anyway, I could really attest to the fact that being on the surfboard and riding the waves could be considered as one of the most exhilarating moments I could ever experience. So I guess it's really the same for you. And that's like, why you keep on coming back.
Mm-hmm. Just one ride. When I arrived in Siargao, just one ride. Every stress of the month is gone.
Because definitely a lot of our listeners would be those individuals who are, one, either interested in heritage conservation and would like to become part of it, or two, those people who are interested in supporting what we are doing in San Sebastian. So, yeah, what could you say? What could you say to them, or what could you tell them? What kind of advice would you tell them, especially those people who are interested in being part of heritage conservation work?
I'm coming from a different, different path. Why I was into conservation. I don't see the reason why I have to go to conservation only. But what people can be attracted to why they will pursue it is that the satisfaction, more than the preserving our heritage buildings, is the satisfaction you get, or the thrill, or the stoke, or what you call this, whatever you call it, that high, when you discover something that is well thought and it's your heritage. So there's a lot of surprises. That it's part of your, as a Filipino, it's yours as a nation. No? That's what we call the scientific value of a heritage building, meaning you learn something from it, aside from conserving it.
Thank you to Melvin for making time for this interview. If you're interested to learn more about San Sebastian and the ongoing restoration, follow us on our Facebook at facebook.com/SaveSSBasilica. We're also on Instagram at SaveSSBasilica. Now, if you have questions, suggestions, or ideas for the next episodes, you can also email us at savesansebastian.org@gmail.com. For now, stay safe, stay indoors, and have a great day ahead of you.